Most stressful time during your time with the administration was what?
Oh my gosh, well, I got fired.
Okay.
So that probably, I worked the first year of the administration, the first year and 2 months, got fired, which was pretty stressful, and then came back the last year of the administration. So sort of that period where I was like waiting to come back, thought maybe I wouldn't, maybe I would. And it's like you work so hard to get where you are, and then it's like, oh, it's all taken away in an instant. It's like, oh, that was rough. But it all worked out in the end. I mean,
Why did you get fired?
so at the time, it had to do with, security clearances and this and that. And at the end of the day, it was because like I was gambling. Um, and it wasn't like that frequent, but I made a lot of money and people were concerned and the bank and the this, and we're doing background checks. And at the time, the chief of staff put in these like super hard line things like if your background check isn't clear, you can't be on campus and this and that. It was probably my own fault, but obviously that was a little severe too. So it was like a combination of the two. But I was like, all right, well, I made my bed, I'll sleep in it. And then, bought my time and came back.
So, in hindsight now, how many years ago were you fired?
2018, so six
It's
and a
been a
half.
minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. How bad was it?
Well, in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened.
How bad was the gambling problem?
Oh, not bad. No, I mean, it was just a lot of money and I won and it was like, okay, you owe taxes. And, it's like, I'm just being like,
So it wasn't an addiction, it was like a
not an
one-off?
addiction. It was like fun.
Mhm. Were you able to do it online? Was it
No,
like
I would
on
go, yeah, with my
Where would you
friends.
go?
Like, there's an MGM in DC, we would go,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
or like I guess it was a lot of money, but wasn't like, it wasn't like every night I was like,
And they found out through a
the bank.
normal background check?
Yeah, something, like it got cleared up within 4 or 5 months, but like still it was like long.
Well, and then people talk, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah. Oh, they still talk. My TikTok comments like, "How's your gambling debt?" It's like, "Dude, I won." I don't say that. I don't say that, but, like, it's like, okay, whatever. Um, but yeah.
Well, what did you learn from that time? I imagine there was a part of it, like,
No, I mean, being
humbling.
outside well, yeah, super humbling, but, number 1, like Tom Brady says, the game goes on. The
Mhm.
next day, Air Force One took off, and there was somebody
Absolutely.
in my job, and, it's like, oh, you think like you're the show goes on.
You're irreplaceable,
Yeah,
and
no,
then
you're not irreplaceable. So that was number 1, and then number 2, like I said, it was a great thing that happened because I was given such perspective, which a lot of my colleagues didn't get until the administration ended, and they're like, "You
interesting.
learn, oh shit, I gotta like, I'm sorry,
No, no, no.
I
Yeah.
gotta like survive in the wild. I gotta like do this over again. I gotta think creatively. Like I'm outside of it, and you also get the perspective of coming back in. It was like, oh, I'm not that I wasn't going hard before because I was his aide. Like you can only do so much. But I was like, "Oh, I'm just like I'm going hard this time," and that's what I did. Because it's like, we're all gonna be out anyway, whether it's in a year or 4 years and when you're out, you're like, "Oh, I wish I woulda,"
Mm.
"I wish I woulda brought my mom to the Christmas party. I wish I
Oh,
woulda,"
yeah.
"I wish I woulda told people this or that," or "I wish I woulda helped get these policies done," or "I wish I woulda," But then when you go back, it's like, "Oh, I'm doing it all." I'm doing all the Trump stuff, and I'm bringing my mom to the Christmas party.
Yeah.
I'm like
How long were you gone for?
I was gone for like a year and a half.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So then you got a round 2, which is so rare.
Very rare, which goes to show, you know, Donald Trump for any of his flaws, it's like, for him to bring me back, that's a big deal. Like nobody, George Bush ain't bringing the aide that got fired for gambling back. Like he might wish him
From a
well.
PR perspective.
It's just like, but he was like, no, yeah, he can come back. And like, there were a lot of people there that like, wanted me back, and like Nick Luna like helped me get back, and like just great people. And they're like, yeah, come back totally. And then when I was there, I was like, oh yeah, let's just do it all, guys. And
Mhm.
yeah, we did the best we could. But
So what was that conversation like when they said, "You're fired"?
oh, it was very abrupt. I went out for a haircut because, like, when you're an aide, you're on 24/7. So you find a time like, oh, he's in this meeting for 2 hours. Okay, I'll run and get a haircut and then come back. And then they're like, oh, the council office wants to see you. And usually they'd ask me, like, oh, like, was the president with this person this weekend? They called about something, whatever. I just like, walked up and they're like, yeah, so background check, something came up, you have to leave. I was like, what? It was like, what? It's like crazy. They're like, yeah, I mean, you can just resign. Like, I'm like, okay, like sign something. Within like 20 minutes, I was out of there. I was like at home, like, what just happened?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was really crazy. But it was, it was fine.
Did you get to say bye to the
Oh,
president? Did you
no.
get to
No, I mean, I probably could have if I asked, but I
did
was
you,
like,
like,
so, like, "What?"
text him like, "Hey, Prez,
No, he
so"
called me
I'm
that night
kidding.
and was like, "Don't worry about it, it'll all be fine, like, you're gonna go work on the campaign for a little while," you know? Jared helped me out too, was like, "Hey, we'll set you up on the campaign, like, things
'Cause
happen,"
they
you know?
knew what it was and
Well, they
that
didn't
you're
know
not
the
a
details, but they knew, like,
criminal.
well, it's not, like, as bad
Mhm,
as people think or whatever,
mhm.
so.
So what exactly did you do during that
I
time?
went and worked on the campaign, but there wasn't really a campaign yet, this is 2018. It's like I was technically working with the reelection campaign and doing a little, but then after a few months, I was like, "You know what? I'm moving home,"
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I moved back home and quit the campaign.
Really?
Yeah.
And did what?
Um, I did a little consulting work, some guys helped me out, and then I started an app with a friend, and I was like, "Let's do the app thing," so we started, like, an alternative social media thing. It was good, but then within, like, 4 months of starting that app, they were already calling me to come back, so it was, like,
Okay.
kinda so I
But
got
you
my
didn't
first
have
crack
to
at the app world, which is
okay.
actually good, because
Mhm.
I learned so much. Me and my buddy learned a lot about apps, and then when I came out, I was like, "Let's try an app again, but this time the dating app," and
Well, but then you had that experience that you would never have had if not for being
Oh,
fired
yeah,
the
no,
first
yeah, it's
time,
like
like
the butterfly effect,
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you were financially secure enough, you hadn't gambled everything away, that you didn't have to go home and, like, go work at
No,
Starbucks, right? So
no,
you
I
were
mean
able to, like, have perspective and, like
yeah, yeah, it was fine, yeah, it was okay, yeah.
and so when they called back, you're like, immediately?
No, like, this was, like, the fall of 2019, like, Nick, who was in my
Okay.
old role, was calling me like, "Hey, the boss wants you back." He was getting married, he was, like, knew he wanted to kinda, like, offset his workload, was like, "Let's bring Johnny back," and, like, he can start doing some of this stuff too. So that was really cool of him, I still owe him for that.
Hmm.
So the conversation started happening, and then by, like, January 1st, I mean, maybe it was, like, the 3rd, I was back, yeah.
Yeah. And were you welcomed? Was it
Yeah, it was great.
that everybody was
Yeah, I mean, at the
that's
time,
cool.
Mick Mulvaney was the chief of staff, he was always super good to
Okay.
me,
Mhm.
and, like, he was like, "Yeah, great to have you back," and it was
And then
like
it vamped up quickly.
and then within a month, yeah, it
I
was like,
mean,
"Alright, you're taking over this office, and we're doing that," and, like, he was yeah,
wow.
it was just like we went and then unfortunately, it was the COVID year, and, like, we did a lot of great things in the personnel office, we were given a lot of leeway, but that year really messed things up, like, it was just I don't know, I hate that year, the COVID year, but we still
Yeah, so
did the
from
best we
a
could.
I mean, yeah, gosh, obviously every person on the planet had has a story or was affected, um, by the pandemic and all the rules and regulations that came down with it.
Yeah.
What we know what it was like, what the president at that time said to us. What was it like inside the White House
Yeah, I mean,
during
I
that
think
time?
everyone was doing the best they could, but there were some of us that thought, maybe we are going a little too far here, and like maybe we should